Hello and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Nick Blumberg. Brandis Friedman is on assignment. Here's what we're looking at.
No more empty promises. No more excuses. It's time for Chicago to make real progress.
Illinois Comptroller Susana Mendoza launches her bid to be Chicago's next mayor. She joins us tonight to discuss her campaign.
We don't lower the cost by growing government. We do it by growing our state.
And recapping the spring legislative session with Illinois House Republican leader Tony McCombie. First off tonight, anti-violence advocates and community leaders are demanding answers from the city on a gunshot detection system. It's been nearly 2 years since the city phased out the controversial spot shotter system. At a City Hall news conference today, residents say they're tired of waiting for answers on a replacement or on bringing the technology back.
Was it perfect? No. But for survivors, it represented one more tool that can help police respond faster, gather evidence, and potentially solve our unsolved cases. So when the city just made that decision 2 years ago to eliminate shot spotters, my question was simple. It was what would you replace it with? What new investment do you have? What new technology do you have? What strategy will help solve our unsolved cases?
Today's news conference was held ahead of a scheduled meeting of the City Council's Public Safety Committee, but that gathering was canceled when not enough alderpeople attended. A UChicago analysis recently found that Chicago police actually responded faster to 911 calls on the south and west sides after ShotSpotter was removed. A major development is breaking ground on Chicago's west side. Officials gathered today to kick off the $7 billion plans that will redevelop more than 55 acres of parking lots around the United Center. The 1901 project's first phase will include a new 6,000-seat music hall, a hotel, retail space, and 2 parking garages. Once complete, the project will also include restaurants, thousands of residential units, a new CTA station, and green space. United Center officials say the development will generate 32,000 construction jobs, 7,000 permanent jobs, and $104 million in annual tax revenue. Last month, City Council members approved a $55 million property tax break for the development. Free YMCA memberships are coming for Chicago teens. As part of its new Get Summer program, the YMCA of Metropolitan Chicago is announcing that young people ages 12 through 18 can get a free membership to the Y starting Monday.
Summer can be a challenging time that when school lets out and structures and safe spaces that kids count on don't always follow them into July and August. That's a challenge we take personally here because these are our kids and this is our community.
The 7 participating locations are the Irving Park, Kelly Hall, Lakeview, McCormick, Rauner Family, Southside, and West Garfield Park YMCAs. Teens 17 and younger must be accompanied by an adult to register. The free membership runs through the end of August. The Chicago Bears starting quarterback has a new starring role. EA Sports and the Bears announced today that Caleb Williams will grace the cover of the 2027 version of the long-running video game Madden NFL. The company teased a full reveal of the cover tomorrow night at 7 Central. The deluxe edition of the game's cover features Williams showing off his signature nail art, including the Bears logo and a Chicago flag. Williams is the first Bear to make the cover of Madden. He told ESPN it's a childhood dream coming true. Up next, Susana Mendoza on her bid to lead Chicago. She joins us right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
A new contender for mayor of Chicago. Illinois Comptroller Susana Mendoza announced her second run for mayor today, having made a first bid in 2019. She served as comptroller since 2016. Before that, she was Chicago's city clerk and a member of the Illinois House. Mendoza's been a frequent critic of Mayor Brandon Johnson. In her announcement today, she called for responsible spending and accountability to everyday Chicagoans. And joining us now is Susana Mendoza, Illinois Comptroller and now candidate for mayor. Thank you for joining the program.
Thanks for having me.
So as we mentioned, several roles in government, a prior shot at the mayor's office. What got you interested in running this time?
Well, it became clear to me, number one, that we are experiencing a crisis of a financial magnitude that the closest thing I could compare it to is when I took over the state of Illinois with that financial crisis. But there's really three major crises, and I've really discovered this because I can feel it as a Chicagoan, but more importantly, I've had a listening tour over the last almost year where I've heard directly from Chicagoans, and they made it clear that we have a financial crisis, a public safety crisis, and a crisis of confidence in that the city is moving in the right direction and can never come back. And so it is absolutely imperative that we get it right this next time. Right, since 2019, we've now had two failed administrations back to back. People tried something different, and it has been a colossal failure. We've seen credit downgrade after credit downgrade for the city of Chicago. At the same time that under my fiscal stewardship, we've seen upgrade after upgrade at the state level. And so I do believe that property taxes are going to always keep squeezing people to death if we don't actually get a handle on the hemorrhaging of our state's finances. Public safety, huge issue. You started talking about ShotSpotter. If you talk to people in the actual communities most impacted by gun violence, they want a system like ShotSpotter to be there. And I would say that, I just heard that story, and they did talk about how the response times have been better, but that was measured against response times in the winter, not in the summer. So if you're going to measure the response times, it should be apples to apples, summer to summer, winter to winter. At the end of the day, if we have a tool that can stop a human being from bleeding out, we should invest in that tool and make sure that we can help save lives and at the same time assist in investigations.
So you're likely to face a crowded field of competitors here, including the potential of some other more moderate candidates such as yourself. How does that complicate your path to victory, do you think?
Well, look, this is America. Everybody has a chance to run. I think that my game plan is going to be to do what I always do, which is go straight to the voters. This is a time in which I've had a good 9-10 months to talk to the voters directly. Voters know who I am. In the last election that I ran in, I was the top vote getter, not only in the state of Illinois, but also here in the city of Chicago. And I love going straight into the neighborhoods. Why? Because I'm a neighborhoods girl. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I was born with more like a plastic spork. And it's versatile, it's efficient, just like me. But that's what most of Chicago's like. They're people who understand daily challenges. I can connect with that. I want to fight for them. And I also want to do a good job of unifying our whole city. We need a mayor who's going to bring us all together instead of finding every area in which we can be divided. I'm going to represent the 2 million plus Chicagoans, some of whom agree with everything I have to say, and those who do not. And that's okay, because a good mayor, a great mayor, is going to listen to every voice, not just the yes people, but the no people, and try to bring people together and find common ground that will lead to progress. Right? Progress is so much more important than promises.
When ICE raids were first beginning in the Chicago area in January of 2025, you were in support. There was a post, indeed, regarding a Thai national with a history of sex crimes for whom there haven't been reported charges. But are you still supportive of the immigration crackdown that's been targeting the Chicago area?
I've been very vocally against targeting hardworking, law-abiding immigrants. I've been very much, though, like any normal, rational person, would not be in favor of sex offenders who, in that specific instance you're referring to, a repeat sex offender is not someone who I would support whether they were born here or not. So I have no problem with going after the worst criminals amongst us, but I absolutely will defend, as I always have, and I've been vocally in support of, hardworking immigrants who add to our fabric of our economy, both as a city and a state. Going after a father with no criminal record who's taking his child to school is despicable, right? I'm never for that. I've been vocally against those types of things. Going after the Tamale woman with no criminal record who's a mother of 4 kids, some with disabilities, that is just wrong. That doesn't make our community any safer, and I've said that many, many times. So to be clear, I am not for criminals, protecting criminals whether they were born here or not. And I do believe that the vast majority of our community, our entire city, is made up of immigrants from all over the world who make Chicago a better place.
You also called for the alleged killer of Loyola student Sheridan Gorman to be deported to El Salvador. There's a prison there with a long history of accusations of human rights abuses. Is that a call you stand by?
I will say this, that person is an absolute scourge to society. My heart breaks for the family of Sheridan Gordon, and my concern is on that family's grieving of that loss. I am definitely not concerned with the comfort of the person who murdered her viciously, and by the way, was just arrested again for having a shank in prison the other day. So, look, I think we have to get our priorities straight as to running a city that puts the victims at the front of a line for compassion and comfort versus the comfort of criminals who are murdering innocent people in our streets. That shouldn't be controversial. That's just common sense.
You know, in 2018, you ran for re-election as controller before launching a mayoral bid in 2019. This time, you didn't run for re-election. Do you think that additional campaign time may give you an advantage over some possible competitors like an Alexi Giannoulias or Mike Quigley who do have re-election bids in November?
Well, what I think is that Chicago voters deserve a mayor who's all in. Right, I could have very easily stepped up for office. I was the top vote getter in the entire state of Illinois in my last re-election. So I have the full faith and confidence that the public would have continued to support me. But I'm not really worried about hanging on to elected office for the rest of my life. I want to be where I can have the biggest impact. And for me, it's not about playing it safe for myself. I'm not worried about my career prospects. I'm worried about the future of this city. And so if I want to go before the voters, like any candidate should, that candidate should be willing to throw their ball over the fence and go for it. Put all their chips on the table and say, I am all in for Chicago. Right now, I'm the only one who's willing to walk away from an office because I don't care about my personal career ambitions. I care about this city, and everybody should really, ideally, be all in for Chicago if they want this job.
During your previous run, you were criticized for your ties to former Alderman Ed Burke. Are you concerned that relationship could pose trouble for this campaign?
Absolutely not. That's so absurd. I mean, any elected official who has ever served for more than 10 minutes over the last 20 to 30 years would have to have had a working relationship with him and many other elected officials. In the same way, I've worked with Barack Obama and had photos with him. So it's just really ridiculous to even bring that up. I'll tell you why. Because if you go talk to any Chicagoan out in the streets, they're going to tell you that they don't even know who that is for the most part, but they do care about the violence in their streets. They care about the fact that we're hemorrhaging money and charging them more in property taxes. And they care about the fact that people are leaving our city and losing confidence in it instead of choosing Chicago as the place to grow their family, grow their business, grow their wealth and opportunities. So I will be the mayor who focuses on the real issues that people care about, because really nobody cares about that nonsense.
Mayor Johnson and Mayor Lightfoot before him have had a somewhat contentious relationship with City Council. What would you do to improve the relationship between a Mendoza administration and alderpeople?
Well, I look forward to being able to actually lead a council because I have experience doing that as a state legislator for 10 years. I was a legislator known for my effective legislation, which was bipartisan. I have Democrats and Republicans work across the aisle to get things done. I did the same thing when I was city clerk of Chicago. I was responsible for managing the council. I was able to modernize the city sticker program. Why? Because I was able to put the votes together to institute the legislation that gave me that authority. So I know how to get things done legislatively at the state level, which the last two mayors have failed miserably at. Certainly at the city council level, I've been there, done that. And obviously managing finances, nobody can even begin to touch the successful financial record that I've delivered for Chicagoans in the state of Illinois. So I know how to bring people together. If I have a superpower, it's building great teams and getting things done. And the city council also, I'm sure, is hungry for actual leadership that knows how to get things done and bring people together. So I'll be a mayor who is absolutely a collaborator, not because I say I will, but because I already have been.
All right, Illinois Comptroller and mayoral candidate Susana Mendoza, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Up next, a conversation with the Republican leader of the Illinois House. Stay with us. The Illinois General Assembly wrapped up its spring session in the wee hours of Monday morning with a $56 billion budget and some key legislation passed. But questions still remain about the Bears Stadium, the fate of new taxes, the focus of state spending, and much more. Joining us tonight to look back on the session is Illinois House Republican leader Tony McCombie. Welcome back to the program.
Well, thanks for having me.
So Bears Stadium, as you know, even better than I, major topic this past session. House passed that mega projects bill in April, allowing payments in lieu of taxes. Then 3:30 Monday morning, Senate passes a different bill allowing municipalities of 70,000 or more to create these local stadium authorities. What was your reaction to that last minute change?
Well, it was just that, a last-minute change. I think it certainly would have been what the Bears were possibly looking for, more so than maybe the mega project. But back to the mega project, I think it's, that was more of a statewide initiative, which would bring investment into the state, which is pretty important. Bears were kind of secondary on that, probably why they didn't like it so much. But I don't know that we have much time. I think if we would have had the Republicans and Democrats, or even just the Democrats from the House, the Senate, and the governor's office, with the Bears sitting in a room, we might have had a deal, but they weren't able to get that done.
From what you hear from the folks in your caucus, is keeping the Bears in Illinois a priority?
As long as it doesn't hurt the property taxpayer. I mean, we want some protections in place, and we believe that the mega project bill that was passed out of the House would have had that fix in there.
Yeah. So House Speaker Chris Welch joined us on the program last night, and he talked about bipartisanship during the budget process. Here's a little bit of what he had to say.
We've gotten better every year since I've been Speaker. Leader McCombie said earlier on a radio show that, she enjoyed the conversations with me, her budgeteers, with my budgeteers. There was a lot of coordination. Are we going to agree? We're going to disagree probably more than we agree because of the differences in the parties. But, we can do better. We can always do better, and I'm committed to that.
What do you make of the Speaker's comments? Do you think Republicans were meaningfully involved in budgeting this year?
I would say collaboration is a push, but certainly I did appreciate the conversation, and we have missed that. We haven't had that. When my first year as leader, this is my fourth year, we did speak regularly. This is the first year we've kind of got back to a conversation. So I'm hopeful that that will continue, and hopefully it'll grow. The rank and file do it much better than he and I do, so hopefully they continue conversations. But collaborations is a little bit of a push.
Yeah, but it does feel like it's better compared to previous years.
Yeah, and quite honestly, it's helpful for our staff. And the day of the budget, or Sunday, I guess I should say, that's what's helpful to them. Our staff on both the House and in the Senate are there for 2 days, sleeping 6 hours, and to have a conversation with their staff, especially and the budgeteers, to know what's coming, really is helpful to them as well, which is the more important piece.
Yeah, collegial, if not necessarily collaborative.
Absolutely, yeah. But we didn't even have hearings. We had subject matter, and that's certainly not transparent for the public. And we've had advocates and taxpayers down for 6 months fighting, and then for them not even to have an option to weigh in, that's not right. That's not good government.
Speaker Welch also addressed criticism that the House and Senate weren't coordinating well, in particular on things like scheduling. He called that a false narrative. Here's a little bit of what he had to say.
Our chambers are very different. Mine is double the size of the Senate. The second year of a GA involves election year. There's a lot of needs of members to be back home in their districts. Our needs are different from the Senate needs. And so when sitting down to do the calendar, that had to come into play.
What's your reaction to that comment?
Well, I am not the Speaker or the President, but I feel that if I was, I certainly would have conversation and collaborate. It is, again, to have the advocates come down. Also, when we're not in the same building together, how are we going to have conversations? So if that was the case, he says he's the listener of the House and not the Speaker, he should listen to everybody.
Yeah. This budget includes a number of new taxes, things like social media companies, digital ads. Where would you have looked to balance the budget in terms of some of the items in there?
Well, it may or may not be popular with some of your viewers, but certainly to have health insurance for illegals and non-citizens is a cut where we certainly would have been interested in that. Real property tax reform, when you're talking about a housing issue, lower our property taxes and more people are going to move into our areas. If we have higher tax base, then we're not going to have to continue to raise our tax rates. But that would be the most obvious.
What do you make of the idea of a tax on high income earners, the so-called millionaires tax that was floated but didn't go anywhere?
Yeah, it would have been up to the voters. It would have been interesting to see how it was worded, but millionaires have the ability, more so than you and I, to leave the state. And you saw that with Ken Griffin, which he took hundreds of millions of dollars that used to help our most vulnerable.
Yeah. Do you expect some of these new taxes that have been enacted in this budget to produce the promised revenue?
No, and I don't think they do either. There was several of the taxes, the social media one, you know, a brainiac idea from Mayor Johnson they can't even implement that. So I think that's why they weren't really counting on that revenue this budget. They want to go ahead and wait till the next budget, see how it works, and you know that's going to cost taxpayers, you know, in the courts.
Speaker Welch and others on the Democratic side said, you know, federal funding cuts as part of last year's One Big Beautiful Bill also complicated this year's budget. Was that something that you saw?
I think it's something that they're certainly talking about. You hear the word $8 billion, but the most apparent thing they talk about is people losing their SNAP benefits. The best way for us to not have people lose their SNAP benefits is to fix our error rate. So the governor has to take care of that. That's an agency mismanagement issue. It was about 6% when he came into office, and now it's over 11%. He gets back down to 6%, we won't lose federal funding.
Now, you and Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, likely not in alignment on a lot of issues, but you were both part of a pretty big group of folks advocating against cuts to the local government distributive fund. For people who aren't familiar with that funding, it's a little bit of a clunky name, but it's an important source of revenue. Why is that important for folks?
Absolutely. Once a mayor of a small town, very different than Chicago, but in 1968, 1969, it was an agreement that a portion of the income tax would be returned to municipalities and villages at 10%. We have not been at that 10% for years. The governor's proposed budget was to cut that by $60 million, and he decided not to do that, so it took it up to 6.47%, which is not still that 10%. You want to lower property taxes rather than blame the local officials and the local school boards, bring that back up to 10%.
Yeah. Funding for K-12 education through the evidence-based funding formula went up by $350 million, still far below the target for many districts. Is the increase in this current budget enough?
Oh, that's the promise, and I'm glad they're keeping it. They didn't do that last year. They took away the $50 million for the property tax relief for schools. So I was glad to see that restored this year.
Yeah, you know, when we're looking for the needed revenue to try and reach these targets for districts, where do you think that education funding should be coming from?
Well, one of the things I think is important that we've had the evidence-based funding model in place now, I think, since 2018, and we need to reevaluate to make sure that it's working the way it's supposed to. So rather than just extending the sunset to see if we are funding properly, we should probably reevaluate that. That's one of the things government does. Illinois is certainly not alone. Starts a program and doesn't check to see if it's still working efficiently. So I'd like to see that first before I could give a real good answer.
There were also some fairly high-profile items that the governor brought up early in the session, things like zoning reform, regulations on data center expansion. Those didn't end up going anywhere in the spring. Do you expect we might see those come back up in the veto session in the fall or in the lame duck early next year?
Yeah, and I think he could unpause the data center incentives if he wanted to just by saying so. So we'll have to see. He and I actually agree that they should be bringing their own energy. I think the technology is changing, so it helps with protections of water. So we'll have to see what he decides to do there. But time will tell.
There was another area of pretty wide bipartisan agreement this year, which was on AI regulation. Why is that something that's important for lawmakers to tackle?
Well, it's important, but we also have to be careful because is this something better to do on a federal side? And some, including myself, would say yes. But this here was really brought by AI companies, wanting a third party to audit to make sure that it is safe. So I think that's certainly important, and I was glad to see that piece of legislation pass.
Yeah. We're almost out of time, but I want to ask, what are the priorities for your caucus moving into the summer months?
Yeah, we really spend a lot of time with our constituents. The best part of the job is when we're outside of the dome, quite honestly, but really to continue some conversations. We had a lot of good conversations with rank and file on a lot of different topics. So certainly to continue those conversations and reach out across the state.
It's always nice to get out of the Capitol and get some fresh air.
Yes, sir, it is.
All right, Illinois House Republican leader Toni McCombie, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And as we mentioned on last night's program, we were joined by Illinois House Speaker Chris Welch. If you missed that conversation, you can watch it on our website or on our WTTW YouTube channel. And that's our show for this Wednesday night. Stay connected with our reporters and what they're working on by following us on Instagram at WTTW Chicago. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. The CEO of ComEd joins us to discuss the state of the energy industry and its impact on customers in Illinois. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Nick Blumberg. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that supports educational initiatives in the legal profession.